violence or no other kind of violence.
Get away! I could be at work, at school, in my car, I can still get shot by the police, but I can get shot anywhere.
So it is what it is.
What's good, YouTube? It's a Black Gen Z Mindset. Make sure you go ahead and like, comment, share, subscribe, and let's get into the video.
So about a little more than 2 years ago, New York State enacted bail reform, which was a really ambitious and audacious attempt to eliminate pretrial incarceration for most crimes. You know, people get arrested. Traditionally, they would go to jail. They'd have to post bail. If you are a poorer person, you might not be able to afford a couple $100s or a couple $1,000 for bail.
And this is arguably the worst sweeping form of reformation that has ever occurred in the criminal justice system to this day. Okay? This bail reform idea, for one, the idea that these super gremlins cannot afford bail is BS, man. It really is, okay? And they implemented this policy in hopes that it would change the discrepancy between the prison population. All right? And that's not what it did at all. It's actually worse, okay? Because these guys who get locked up, now they know that, hey, I don't have to post money to bail out, okay? And they're getting back out on the streets and doing the same exact thing. The recidivism rate in all of these areas where these sweeping reforms have taken place, it's not just New York, but all of these areas, the recidivism rate has gone up. So it's safe to say this quote-unquote criminal justice reform is falling flat on its face.
So they wanted to level the playing field. That has led to backlash.
Level the playing field. What do you think they mean by that? Level the playing field. I'll tell you what they mean. They think by passing this bail reform law that it is going to somehow magically even out the prison population when it comes to the amount of super gremlins and glider gremlins in prison. The issue is, even though there are more gliders in the United States, there are way more super gremlins on demon time than there are glider gremlins, okay? And that's just the reality that we're faced with, and nobody wants to accept it. They don't understand it. They think that it is some type of giant conspiracy, when in all actuality, I did the story on the 10-year-old in Atlanta who was waving around the gun. A lot of these dudes just think doing the crimes, doing the things that they do to get themselves locked up for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, they think it's fun.
From law enforcement officials, from unions, from tough on crime politicians who have blamed bail reform and this sparing of many people from pretrial incarceration.
He changed his verbiage from freeing to sparing. Interesting.
For an increase in crime.
So far, they got
If you look about a year before bail reform took effect, bail reform went into effect in January 2020. So a year before that, the rearrest rate of all people in New York City that were released pre-trial was about 5%. And a small fraction of those were for violent felonies. If you fast forward to December of 2021, so last December, about 2 years after bail reform took effect, that number of rearrests, that percentage, was a little above 4%. There were fewer people, about 40,000 or so, on pretrial release at that time. And again,
and look, they're fudging the numbers. They're playing with the numbers. The reason why that occurred is because a lot of dudes just aren't getting charged. Okay, and if they are getting charged, the charges are getting dropped. So this is what you guys got to understand. They changed the laws to fudge the numbers to make it seem like it's better now than it was before they implement this policy. So you got to pay attention to that. They're obscuring the data and making you believe that New York City is actually safer with these sweeping reforms, when in all actuality, you can see all across the country that they simply don't work.
It was a small fraction, about 275 or so people that were rearrested for violent felonies. The rest, misdemeanors, low-level offenses, that sort of thing. So comparatively, pre-bail reform and post-bail reform, that has been consistent or shrunk in terms of rearrest.
This hour, where a knock at the door of this home right here put a man face to face with his killer. The victim shot to death in his own entryway. News 4's Checky Beckford live at this hour at the scene in Kingsbridge as the search now is underway for the person who pulled the trigger. Checky.
And Natalie, at one point tonight, it seemed that police suspected the shooter was still here on scene, bringing in ESU and K9 units to search the basement area of this home, but they left empty-handed this evening. This, of course, comes at the same time, on the same day that the NYPD rolls out its new initiative to fight violence. A typically quiet Kingsbridge street swarmed by police in riot gear Monday after a man was shot and killed inside his Irwin Avenue home.
I saw the guy, they put him in ambulance.
Police say the 43-year-old victim was shot just before 6 tonight after answering a knock at the door.
So, knock, knock. Who's there? Super Gremlin? On demon time.
Investigators seen here examining a door security camera for clues.
You know, I don't know who does that, rings your bell and just shoots you.
Police searching for a shooter as neighbors try to make sense of it all.
I'm very concerned, absolutely. Right across the street, yeah, it's real close to home. So it just makes you wonder, you know, you got kids.
This latest fatal shooting in the city comes after a bloody weekend that saw 12 others shot. And on the same day, the NYPD launched a new strategy aimed at reducing violence.
So we just heard the glider man speak about the data and the reoffenses of violent criminals in New York. That percentage staying the same or going down with the bail reform. And then we see this. I wouldn't put it past the super gremlin who did this to say that he had a violent criminal history. I wouldn't.
Listen, for 8 years, we have told police, for the most part, not to carry out public safety. That stopped. January 1st, that message is over, and we're going to get on the ground.
Mayor Adams today touting what he calls the Summer 40 plan. 40 precincts with the highest crime, moving hundreds of officers to the night shift, including 350 neighborhood coordinating officers, plus installing a designated inspector in each borough.
But our precinct commanders and officers are now going to have a clear understanding of what is expected of them.
Neighbors here hoping to stem the tide of violence now encroaching on their neighborhood.
In the city in general, because I work downtown, to be honest with you, just more police. The more you have police presence, the more people get scared.
Wow. A complete 180. A total turnaround from what we saw in the summer of 2020. We went from defund the police to the black and brown community asking for a larger police presence in the most populated areas in New York City. These super gremlins are on demon time.
And they don't do stuff like that.
Yeah. And the mayor says police will continue to zero in on gangs, which are the main drivers of violence and shootings. Of course, the motive for this shooting tonight is still unclear as the search for the shooter continues. We're live in Kingsbridge tonight. Checky Beckford, News 4, New York.
I'm here on the corner of MLK and Medgar Evers, and it's a very tranquil scene compared to just a couple hours ago where a drive-by shooting
just took place. Excuse me. I'm getting live updates as we speak. I've just been updated to the amount of casualties from this drive-by shooting, and I'm getting reports that 2 people were actually declared deceased and 27 others were shot and injured, but are in stable condition. And although we must pray for the families of the fallen, we must also praise God for the aim of the super gremlin. If you want to know more about the victims of this crime, make sure you add BGZM News 17 on Patreon at www.patreon.com/blackgenzmindset. Also, don't forget to like the video, share the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and comment on the video to continue the discussion on how we can find solutions to all this gun violence in the streets. For more hard-hitting news coverage from the community, by the community, I'm Jenquavius Jackson, here live, reporting from Atlanta, Georgia, BGZM News 17.
And cut.
All right, dog. Let's get the out of here before these niggas come back.
Whoa. Yo! Ain't that nigga J.
Nah, that ain't me. That ain't me.
He just went live
That
with
ain't
that
me.
funky ass suit
That's
on.
that nigga. That's not me.
Hey, get that nigga.
Jenquavius Jackson, here live, reporting from Atlanta, Georgia. Pray for me.
Let's bring in LaRon Singletary, who is a Republican congressional candidate in New York and former Rochester police chief. Good morning. It's great to see you again. What do you make of Mayor Eric Adams with the tux and the pedicure? And everybody's allowed to have fun, but people look at the crime rate up 42%, and critics call that tone deaf.
Well, good morning. Thank you for having me. And you're absolutely right. It is tone deaf. Democrats remain tone deaf on the issue of crime, and they refuse to acknowledge a true action plan. Like Eric Adams just said, he wants to continue to talk about.
Wow. Eric Adams did not pull up to the Met Gala with a in-gun violence tuxedo. This is crazy.
About it. But let's be about it. Let's have a true plan of action to address crime within our inner cities. We don't need symbolic ideologies such as wearing a tuxedo with in-gun violence on it. I'm surprised that a fellow law enforcement officer doesn't realize the sense of urgency that we are in right now.
Exactly. But for him to actually address the problem, he's going to talk about these super gremlins. And what we found is that he would rather do a sit down with these super gremlins and have a sit down with the same super gremlins who are terrorizing the streets, okay? Remember, we covered the story where Mayor Eric Adams did the sit down with Mano and then all his other super gremlin rapper friends, Fabio Foreign, a guy who was caught with a weapon in New York City and is facing charges. So Mayor Eric Adams, he's not going to get the job done. The Democrats, as a matter of fact, they don't have what it takes to get this job done because he's too busy. He's come down with the wanna be invited to the cookout syndrome that I always speak about in the community. He wants to be invited to the cookout, and he'll do whatever it takes. If that means sitting down with known gang members and known drill rappers who speak about the illicit crimes that they're involved with, he'll do that. All for the acceptance of a community who would pretty much shoot him in the face or stab him in the back if given the opportunity.
People are dying in our cities, and the people who are dying look just like me. It's time to stand up for law-abiding citizens and take back our streets. Over the last 2 years, there was a 32% increase in African-American homicides with regard to the defunding of the police movement, which made cities less safe. So it's time to stop talking about it and put a plan of action together and support our law enforcement because they have the solution to the problem that we're dealing with today.
We talk about that problem, LaRon. We have Rochester, New York sees 8 shootings in 3 days, the youngest being a 14-year-old, and struck by gunfire with 3 children inside a home that was shot, becoming the new Chicago, talking about Rochester. What is it that wearing a tuxedo to celebrate?
They're calling Rochester, New York, the new Chicago. Okay? This is different.
Celebration can do that maybe you as a congressional candidate getting to Congress can't do?
Well, I tell you what, I'm not sure what the tuxedo is going to do to solve the problem there, but you're right. 8 shootings over the weekend. 6 of them occurred during broad daylight between the hours of 12 p.m. and 6 p.m. on a Sunday. And you're right. One was a 14-year-old boy. In a separate incident, we had 3 kids who were in their home at a Fisher-Price table, sitting down, having dinner, and having to dodge bullets that came through their home. And just a week ago, we had a 10-year-old who was shot 4 times in the chest. Luckily, she's alive. And also, it's just insane what's going on right now. And we can continue to say by the grace of God or that these people are still alive, but how much longer do we have before Lady Luck begins to run out? And we start saying, what a tragic incident. We should have done a little more. And that little more should be letting the police do their job, because for the last 2 years, we've seen politicians put politics over people, particularly when it comes to public safety. And it's time to stand up for people who are wanting to be law-abiding in our communities and wanting to be safe.
Yeah, and LaRon, just looking back at recent history, so 2021, police departments across the country got defunded in 2020. In 2021, a lot of those departments got their funding back because
she called.
Cities across the country realized what a mistake that was, but still crime continues to go up. Why is that?
Because Democrats don't want to address the issue. They want to continue to put money behind social programs, and that just doesn't work.
Programs. Hey, this brother's snapping, okay? He's snapping right now. Shout out to him.
When I was police chief in the city of Rochester, I never had a social agency call up and say, Chief, what can I do to help you solve the crime? We need to make sure that this is not a zero-sum game. Nobody has to totally lose on this issue. If you want to have social programs, we need to make sure that it's backed up by a law enforcement plan. People need to be safe, and law enforcement is the viable solution to that issue. We have to make sure that law enforcement has the tools, resources, and the ability to do their job. And they must feel supported, because as you pointed out, we've seen police officers defunded, and many of them are leaving the job in record numbers. They're retiring, they're resigning, and they're going to other police departments like Florida. And
they're like, bye-bye, communita, sayonara, and good riddance.
Texas, where they feel supported. They're leaving places like New York, like many citizens are leaving, because they don't feel safe.
LaRon, I don't believe that any voting bloc is a monolith, especially under the guise of identity politics. But we do kind of qualify or statistically count something like the black community as a voting bloc. And so as we look at the early voting in midterm elections, the primaries begin today, and Democrats are losing popularity among black adults specifically. Just tell me what your thoughts on this. You're running as a Republican. You think for yourself, you've come to this conclusion on your own, but where is that voting bloc, that block of voting adults on the Democratic Party and what the Republican Party has to offer?
I tell you what, I think the Democratic Party, as well as President Biden, they are losing the African-American voting bloc, just as they're losing the Hispanic voting bloc. Many African...
I ain't gonna lie, I have to see it to believe it. Just from keeping my ear to the streets, that's not what I'm hearing, but we'll see.
African Americans feel that the Democratic Party is no longer the party of their parents. The Democratic Party is no longer the party of their grandparents. Right now, the African Americans in many cities believe that their votes are taken for granted. And I left the Democratic Party last year as a result of Democrats putting politics over people, over public safety especially. And I think it's time that the Democrats start to wake up. And I think that's why many voters are going to go to the booths this November and vote for Republicans, because they're tired of crime.
Well, Joe Biden's down 20% in just about a year among black adult Americans. So that shows you kind of where he is with it. All right, LaRon.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us, and good luck with your candidacy.
Thank you, LaRon.
Reaction in the tri-state to possibly overturning a woman's right to choose, no surprise, has been fast and powerful. An electorate that has been fairly quiet about the midterm elections in our area suddenly may not be quiet at all anymore. A rally right now to protect a woman's right to choose and against overturning
a woman's right to choose. Okay. Oh, Lord. All right. So if we have to go over this debate one more time, I will. Okay. So the origins of Planned Parenthood already messed up. We got Margaret Sanger, known racist, okay? She hated super gremlins, all right? And she implemented this program in order to rid the United States of said super gremlins. Now what it has evolved into today is they talk about, oh well, you know, it's sex education and all this kind of stuff. Really, it's just absolving these women of their promiscuity, if you will. When it comes to this abortion debate, the women always bring up the fact that, oh well, you can't tell a woman what she's doing with her body. Well, you're actually eating for two now, so it's not just your body. Another point that I would like to make up, they always say, oh, well, what if somebody takes the WAP or incest? 99.9% of abortions are not the result of incest or somebody taking the WAP. So I just want to get that out there first before we get into this conversation. So let's get it.
Roe v. Wade. It's happening in Foley Square. Eyewitness News reporter NJ Burkett live at the scene, and he continues our coverage. Newt.
That's right, Bill. Foley Square, Lower Manhattan, in the shadow of the U.S. federal courthouse here, where, as you said, a huge rally is just now getting underway. You get a sense of the scope of this building rally now from high above Foley Square in Newscopter 7. This is a rally, Bill, that was essentially planned overnight, a rally that is now expected to draw hundreds, if not thousands, of people to Lower Manhattan. Yeah, well, not all of them women, Bill. It's a testament to just how shocked and how outraged many people really are, worried about the future of women's reproductive rights and the overall direction of the U.S. Supreme Court. At City Hall, activists joined with women in city government to...
The funny thing is they thought they was going to throw in Ketanji Brown Jackson and get an ally. She doing her own thing, okay? She's doing her own thing.
Condemn the draft opinion and to chart a path forward. The focal point for the protest has, of course, been the High Court itself in D.C., where the opinion was first drafted and circulated and then ultimately leaked to Politico. Abortion rights are guaranteed here in New York under state law. But there is concern for women elsewhere in mostly conservative states. And there is also concern about the broader implications of the draft opinion.
It is dangerous, it is unconscionable, and it should be unthinkable in this nation, in this day, and yet here we are.
We're not going to back down, and we're here to stay to make sure that healthcare is a priority, and abortion is healthcare.
So just use this as a rallying cry, basically, right?
Yes.
And guys, I'm probably going to do a breakdown of this topic. I have a report on the effects of abortion in the black community specifically, and it pretty much proves that Planned Parenthood actually targets black and brown communities in order to render a certain population result, you know, and I'm not one to dive into these huge conspiracies, and it's really not a conspiracy. It's just facts, okay? So the fact that you have these women advocating for this, and I'm not saying that a lot of these women don't need to have kids either. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is they need to be more responsible on the front end so that they don't have to go to the decision of getting an abortion, all right? And it's ridiculous how these women will argue for this and, oh, well, men shouldn't be in charge of a woman's body and all this crap. Now you got women on the Supreme Court and they're making this decision too. We've got women all throughout. The political system. So at this point, you're saying, oh, well, old white men are making this. It's not that anymore. Okay, stop it. It's not that anymore. There's plenty of women integrated within the political system. They have enough voice, which they've pretty much been able to do whatever they've wanted. They wanted up to this point, and they have a voice in. And, you know, contrary to popular belief, a lot of the women who are in leadership positions, not all, but a lot of them are against abortion.
Today was a rally cry to make sure women and families in New York State know that we have their back.
And back now, the live.
You have their back by I mean, you have a child here. What if this child was aborted? I don't get it. Okay? It's wild.
Picture here in Foley Square. The crowd is growing by the minute. The rally was set to begin at 5 o'clock. Among the listed speakers, New York State Attorney General Letitia James. We're going to continue to follow developments here in Foley Square. Much more for you on Eyewitness News tonight at 6 o'clock. We're live in Lower Manhattan. And Jay Burke at Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
And Jay, thank you. If Roe v. Wade were overturned, abortion would not automatically become illegal everywhere in the U.S. Take a look at this map. The states in red and orange could immediately or quickly ban a woman's right to choose. The states in blue have already enacted their women's rights laws, and the right to abortion would be protected. That includes New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, which would expand access. Stacey Sager is live outside Planned Parenthood in Hempstead with that part of our coverage. Stacey?
Well, Sade, nothing would change here in the tri-state area for women seeking abortions right now, except maybe more women could come in from out of state seeking abortions. They would be welcomed here with open arms. Those were the words from New York's governor today, and what followed were even stronger words.
The protesters weren't the only ones galvanized by today's news. The politicians immediately weighing in. Governors from the tri-state area, 3 Democrats vowing to uphold state laws already designed to protect women who need reproductive health care, including abortions. In New York today.
We're not playing defense. We're playing offense. And my message to those who will deny this fundamental right, basic right,
it's a fundamental right and basic right to terminate the life of another human being that you created.
You don't want to mess with us. You don't want to mess with the state of New York. And I assure you, this is a fight that you will not win.
In New Jersey, where the Reproductive Freedom Act was introduced as state law right after President Trump appointed Amy Coney Barrett to replace Justice Ginsburg.
It was as clear then as it is now that this court, stacked with Trump appointees, could not be trusted. If the court indeed does take this awful step, this decision will have no impact on New Jersey state law.
And in Connecticut, where state lawmakers passed reproductive rights legislation only 4 days ago, Governor Lamont now vowing to sign it and to extend protection to women from out of state.
I want to be very careful that people know they can do it safely here. People know that if they come to Connecticut, they can have a procedure safely here.
Statistics from the CDC also painting a clearer picture now of who's getting abortions and when. Nearly all of them, close to 93%, are performed in the first trimester. More than half of them are women in their 20s, and there is a racial disparity.
Uh-oh, here we go.
Black women are more than 3 times as likely to have abortions.
Black women are more than 3 times more likely to have abortions than any other race. So what does that mean? What does that mean, chat? What does that mean? Oh, I'll tell you what it means. It means that they're sexually irresponsible. It means that they're the most promiscuous. It means that they're having the most kids out of wedlock. This is not good. We all knew this. People have been denying it for years. The CDC put it out. They said there's a racial disparity. Black women are 3 times more likely to get an abortion. Okay, and it's a little bit more than 3 times more likely. So, you know, if there isn't some type of movement or push for this. I don't know what to say.
As white women.
Yeah, and the CDC says the factors contributing to that racial disparity are very complex. Unequal.
No, it's not. Unequal access to healthcare. They're gonna make all these BS excuses. They're just hot in the sack. They want to smash. They smash it on Pookie, Ray Ray, and Tyrone. And they're a little quicker to give it up to these guys, these certain guys who end up being deadbeat dads and all this kind of stuff. Bums. And this is not from my words. This is what they are saying. Oh, well, you know, these black men, they ain't nothing out here. It ain't nothing out here for us. It's not my words, okay?
Access to health care and family planning in certain communities, economic disadvantages, and just a very complex system of problems that would have to be resolved in order to settle that.
Oh, God. She don't know what to say. She don't know what to say. These super single mother gremlins are on demon time.
Planning in certain communities, economic disadvantages, and just a very complex system of problems that would have to be resolved in order to settle that. We are live outside.
Gang violence and other kind of violence.
So it is what it is.